On today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, we've got a whole new batch of Eagles quarterback what-ifs after some news from last week about Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, all that and more on this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We want to thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day, Monday through Friday. Shout out to the everydayers for making us a part of your day. I'm Louie DiBiase, your only daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can also find us on Twitter at Locked On Birds and at DiBiase. LOE. We are in the dog days of the summer, which means the dog days of the offseason. Eagles training camp still over a month away, but the Seattle Seahawks, there might be some news soon because the Seattle Seahawks just announced that they're going to be wearing their awesome, 90s? I think they wore those in the 70s through the 90s. Those bright blue and bright green jerseys with the silver helmet. Those things are incredible. Seattle announced today they're wearing those jerseys week 8. Maybe Philadelphia is going to announce Kelly Green coming up soon and what games that they're going to wear the beloved 90s getup. Because that's what it's going to look like. It's going to look like, Jeffrey Lurie said, as close to the Randall Cunningham jerseys as Nike can make them look. So hopefully we get some news soon. We actually did get some Eagles news, though, last weekend, but it was more of a what if. It wasn't an actual report. It's about what news could have been. And we knew this was out there about Russell Wilson, right? We knew last year in the 2022 offseason, the Philadelphia Eagles, they were looking for quarterbacks. I mean, they had a certain amount of belief in Jalen Hurts after he went 7-2 down the stretch in 2021, helped them, clinch a playoff berth, really mostly though on his legs. Then they had that wake-up call in the wild card round against Tampa Bay, and Philadelphia's like, okay, we like Hurts, but can he ever be an elite passing quarterback? We're not so sure, so we're not going to go all in on Jalen. So this offseason, what are we going to do? We're going to feel around for Deshaun Watson, maybe, if he's available for trade, for Russell Wilson. And again, we knew those rumors last year that Wilson did not want to waive his no-trade clause for Philadelphia or Washington. We also heard, too, that, maybe they were considering the 2023 draft as an outlet when they made that trade with the New Orleans Saints, collecting an extra first in this year's class. They might have thought, we're going to need a couple first-round picks. If Hurts doesn't take that step in 2022, we might have to move up for a Will Levis, an Anthony Richardson, a Bryce Young, or a CJ Stroud. So again, we knew that Jalen Hurts last year, the Eagles weren't as committed as they are right now, giving him the richest contract in NFL history at the time of the signing. But then we got some even further details about the Russell Wilson side of things last offseason when a reporter from Sports Illustrated, he was doing a local radio spot, and he mentioned that the Eagles and the Seahawks pretty much had a deal done. Like, there was a actual deal in place. Last year, we heard the Eagles called about Wilson, they called about Watson, but they didn't really get that far because Russ said that he's not going there. The only place he'll consider is Denver. And so it's not like this news is anything, no new revelation, but the fact that they pretty much had the structure of an actual specific trade in place with Seattle, where they were going back and forth with John Snyder and the Seahawks front office about it, shows just how deep they truly were in this, that it wasn't just because last year it was, okay, Russell Wilson probably won't waive his no-trade clause, but we also wondered how in are the Eagles? Like, did they actually make a serious offer? If Wilson said, I will come to Philly, was it a done deal? Now it sounds like that actually was the case, that if Russell Wilson said, yeah, I'll go to the Eagles instead of the Broncos, Russell Wilson is probably the quarterback in 2022, and Jalen Hurts is in Seattle. And I get at the time why Russell Wilson didn't want to come to Philly. They had, I think, a bad quarterback reputation after what happened with Carson Wentz, and they failed to build around Wentz from 2018 to 2020, and their roster, it was good still. Like, they had an elite offensive line. They still had a lot of pieces on defense in the secondary and the defensive line, but and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert, but they didn't have A.J. Brown yet. There were still questions about the coaching staff and, about the overall talent of this team and the ceiling. and just, if it's the right environment to be a quarterback with the fan base and with the front office and the ownership. And again, everything that happened with the Wentz, Doug, Howie, Louie drama. So I understand at the time why Wilson did not want to come to the Eagles, but man, looking at it with hindsight, now that was clearly a mistake because the Eagles now are the best roster. They're the most balanced team in football. And I think every quarterback, is there a team that's more quarterback friendly right now than Philadelphia? The only place you could probably say is two teams I would think of, San Francisco, Kansas City, and it's Philadelphia, but it's definitely not Denver. So man, that looks bad for Russell Wilson now, but it looks great for the Eagles right now. I mean, could you imagine if Russell Wilson was the quarterback last year instead of Jalen Hurts? I mean, they were so close, apparently, to not having that MVP year from Jalen, not making the Super Bowl, not nearly pulling off a shootout championship win against the greatest quarterback in the league right now in Patrick Mahomes. They would have been in a much worse spot. Absolutely, if they had Russell Wilson. And again, I think Wilson would have been better in Philly last year than he was in Denver. He had a better offensive line. I think he had a better coaching staff, right? Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen know how to build an offense, and Brian Johnson much better than Nathaniel Hackett did. So I think Russ would have been better for sure. But is he going to be at the level of 2022 Jalen Hurts? No way, absolutely not. Are they the one seed in the NFC and representing the NFC in Arizona for the Super Bowl in Super Bowl 57? I don't think so. They're probably more of along the ceiling of the 2021 team where they're, I don't know, the range is 7-10 to I'd say 10-7, probably more like 9-8. Pretty much who you were in 2018, 2019, 2021. That's who you would have been in 2022 if you had Russell Wilson as the quarterback. And this is why, again, I've been hyping up Howie Roseman more than almost anybody for the last calendar year. But this is also why you have to recognize it's not just execution in the NFL that makes you great. Sometimes you just got to get damn lucky. Like the New England Patriots, they stumbled upon the greatest quarterback of all time in the 6th round. That's the ultimate example of luck in the NFL needing to go your way. I mean, look at the Eagles in 2017. They had to have a lot of luck go their way to win their first championship. The 2022 Eagles and beyond, to have Jalen Hurts, the current version, as their quarterback, you needed luck because plan A and maybe even plan B and C over a 2-year stretch, 2021 and 2022, it might not have been Jalen Hurts under center. It might have been Russell Wilson. It could have been Deshaun Watson, Carson Wentz, even to a certain degree, maybe the 2023 class. Sometimes you just got to get lucky, and they got lucky that Russell Wilson did not want to become an Eagle. And it's not just Russ, but man, last year they were so close to having a combo of Russell Wilson and Allen Robinson over Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, because we know Adam Schefter, he went on, I think it was part of my take a few months ago, and he said the Eagles were close to signing Allen Robinson last offseason in March before the Los Angeles Rams swooped in last second and stole him from the Eagles, and that's what pushed the Eagles over the top during the draft to trade for A.J. Brown. So imagine, there's a universe out there where Russell Wilson is throwing the football to Allen Robinson in Philadelphia, and who knows, maybe A.J. Brown is somewhere else, and Jalen Hurts is the MVP with the Seattle Seahawks. There's a universe out there where that exists, and the Seahawks would then be what the current Eagles are. I think 100%. Seattle would be that top team. Because Jalen Hurts, to me, like, yes, the weapons he had in Philly, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, that offensive line, the defense getting turnovers, the coaching staff building around his strengths, absolutely helped his improvements, his development last year. But Hurts made a lot of improvements on his own last year that were going to make him great regardless of his environment. And it's not like the Seahawks environment was bad, because he was definitely going to be in that trade with the Seahawks. I mean, Drew Lock got sent over, and that was a key part of it for the Seahawks. They wanted Drew Lock in that trade for Russell Wilson. So Jalen Hurts is definitely going to Seattle in that scenario. And then he's throwing the football to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and he's got that young defense. And we're probably talking right now about the Seahawks in the way that we are the Philadelphia Eagles, and who knows, maybe they still have Jackson Smith and Jigba as well, and they have an elite trio just like the Eagles do. I mean, look at Geno Smith last year. Look what he was able to do in that offense. You don't think the 2022 version of Jalen Hurts would have been able to do the same thing? No, absolutely. He was still going to blow up last year, and that's how close things can be in this league, and it's why I cherish every good year and good position that you're in, because even when you have, to me, the best general manager in football right now, that is Howie Roseman. I mean, he not taking anything away from his rebuild of the 2020 team to 2023, he has performed a masterpiece that should honestly almost maybe give him a gold jacket now. But he did have some plans that could have really hurt this team. And one of them was trading for Russell Wilson. That's how close things are in the NFL. Even the best of the best can make mistakes. And man, things could have been a whole lot different. And I live for these kind of stories. I want to keep talking about it coming up next because I want to get into what specifically that trade that the report from last week surfaced about could have looked like between the Eagles and the Seahawks. Plus, quarterback scenarios, Howie had some other ideas outside of Jalen Hurts. Which ones would have worked out the best and which ones would have been a disaster? All that and more on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles. And guys, today's show is sponsored by FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. Make a fast break to FanDuel right now during the NBA Finals. 1-1, series all tied up. Miami stole that game, game 2 in Denver. That's big. So right now, get over to FanDuel because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's right, $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. FanDuel is the best. Great promotions every day. It's a safe and secure app. You get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. It kills us Philadelphia 76ers fans to do it, but you got to keep betting on Jimmy Butler. So, no better place to bet. FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. It's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, Eagles fans, we are continuing on this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Thanks for making us a part of your day. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to the everydayers. Right now, though, we are in off-season mode, so we're going to be doing about 3 to 4 episodes a week for a couple weeks. And then when we get closer to July and training camp gets going, then we'll be back to Monday through Friday. But if you are wondering why there won't be 5 shows every week, at least for the next few weeks with Gino's bachelor party, his wedding's coming up, my brother's wedding's coming up too. So we're probably going to be at 3 to 4 a week. There might still be some weeks where we're at 5, but for June, so expect that schedule to be on for LOE, and then in July, we're back to every single day. On today's show, I'm having a lot of fun. I love talking about what ifs, and honestly, I didn't think I was going to be able to do them this offseason because the last 2 years we've done that series, and we kind of maximize them. Like every what if scenario dating from 2020 and pushed back in Eagles history, I had pretty much talked about that was worth doing a show on. But now, since there's a lot that's happened since 2020, right? I mean, we got the story about the Russell Wilson trade this past weekend, and Pro Football Talk's Mike Florio actually added on to those rumors about the Eagles having a deal done for Russell Wilson before Wilson nixed it, about another quarterback that we all know the Eagles were potentially in on. We know they were trying to go after Deshaun Watson as well, and a lot of guys. They were considering every avenue, and I respect that. Just because it wouldn't have worked out with Russell Wilson, I love the mentality Howie Roseman had last year, which was to maximize or just to look into every avenue as he does to find an elite quarterback. He was obsessed with finding that elite guy. And of course, the one that became that player was the one he had all along. It's the, your friend that's a girl that has the glasses on and she takes the glasses off and you're like, whoa, she was the one the whole time. And that was Jalen Hurts. So we're glad it worked out. It wouldn't have probably for the better in these other scenarios, but I still like the mentality that Howie had last year. And so I want to get into those quarterback scenarios that could have played out. But first, so if the Eagles did end up making a trade with Seattle, what would that have looked like? Right? Like, even if they had Russell Wilson last year, I still think they're not a total train wreck. I mean, I think they're still a 9-8 football team. Probably they're a wild card contender, and they probably still would have contended in the NFC East compared, with Dallas, New York, and Washington. But they would have been a lot worse off, not just from quarterback, but Seattle in that trade. So they got from Denver 2 first-round picks. They got 2 second-round picks and a 5. They also got Drew Lock, Noah Fant, and Shelby Harris, who's a defensive end. So the Eagles probably in that trade that was nixed by Wilson's no-trade clause, they probably would have given up Jalen Hurts. I would assume Noah Fant is not Noah Fant. I don't know. Noah Fant. He's not Dallas Goedert. They're not giving up Goddard in that trade. It's probably equal to Quez Watkins coming off a good 2021, I would say. And then Shelby Harris, I'd probably say they throw Milton Williams in that deal, plus 2 first-round picks, So one in each year. So one of them's probably the Jordan Davis pick. So you don't trade up for Jordan Davis. And then the other one's probably the Nolan Smith pick from this past year. Or it's the Jalen Carter pick. Or maybe both. Because if you trade for Russell Wilson, do you make that deal with the New Orleans Saints, which was geared around the quarterback class of this year? That was the main reason Howie made that trade with New Orleans. So do they still make that trade if they do the deal with Russell Wilson? I'm not so sure. So you give up basically Hurts, Quez, Milton Williams, Jordan Davis, one or both of Nolan Smith and Jalen Carter. You give up 2 second-round picks, so that's Cam Jurgens and Tyler Steen. That's an insane amount of core pieces from this roster. So not only are you downgrading a quarterback, but you're losing so many potential stars and some guys I think are going to be studs in 2023. You probably still could have got A.J. Brown because you had 3 first-round picks last year. You probably still could have moved 1 to Tennessee to get Brown. So Russell Wilson with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert, again, still probably a solid, good team, but I don't think they would have been great for sure. And giving up all of those young pieces, those are the pieces that make the Eagles so scary, not just this year, but for the future. So they almost, I mean, it could have been really, really bad for the Eagles. Thank God that trade did not go through. Thank God pretty much every scenario did not play out the way they did that Howie was looking into at quarterback, because they ended up with the best guy. They ended up with Jalen Hurts. But again, Howie's plan A was never Hurts. And some people don't like to recognize that as if it's a bad thing. It's an insult to Howie or to Jalen. It's not. Jalen Hurts coming into the league was not who he is right now. Jalen Hurts coming out of the 2021 season was not who he is right now. Just because he's elite now doesn't mean history is rewritten. He wasn't that guy. Howie was right to look for other quarterbacks. He even drafted him to be a backup to Carson Wentz. So we love that he became the elite guy. But last year, it's not a surprise at all. You're hearing that Howie was going in on Russell Wilson. And we know they loved him dating back to the 2020 or 2012 draft. It wasn't just Russell Wilson, though. Mike Florio said the Eagles were also rumored to be interested in Kyler Murray. Before Arizona and Kyler got that deal done, Murray had requested a trade. Apparently, Howie was calling around about Kyler Murray. So we know Howie was trying everything. He had some belief in Jalen Hurts. He was considering Kyler Murray. He was considering Russell Wilson. We know he was considering Deshaun Watson as well. Or at least that's what we heard from the Philadelphia Inquirer and The Athletic, is that the Eagles were interested, but Watson, like Wilson, would not waive his no-trade clause. We also know at the end of the 2020 season, they wanted Carson Wentz to calm down. They wanted him to come back in 2021 and probably compete for his job with Jalen Hurts. It's a huge reason that they hired Nick Sirianni, Frank Reich's right-hand man, is they wanted to fix Carson Wentz in 2021. So there were a lot of things that could have happened that he was trying. We also know another rumor was from Ian Rappaport. Before the Eagles traded down in 2021 with Miami, he was considering trading up to number 3 for Zach Wilson until he heard from his friend Joe Douglas that the New York Jets were going to take him at 2. So none of these scenarios play out as well as Jalen Hurts, but which ones do play out the best and the worst? I think the best scenario that would have played out outside of Jalen Hurts becoming the guy is probably the only one the one that Howie was least considering. And it was taking a quarterback in the 2021 class just at the spot that he was in once he traded down with the Miami Dolphins. Taking Justin Fields in 2021 is the second best scenario here outside of Jalen Hurts being the guy, because I think Justin Fields this year is going to be Jalen Hurts last year. I think Fields is going to blow up. I think by the end of this season in 2023, we're going to say Justin Fields is the second best quarterback in the NFC, only behind Jalen Hurts. I truly believe that with his weapons, with Darnell Mooney, Chase Claypool, with DJ Moore. I think he's going to blow up in a division in the NFC North that's up for grabs. That would have been the second best scenario, is Howie just sitting on his hands and saying, I'm taking Justin Fields. But the ones he was really considering, here's how I'd rank those scenarios. From number 1, they work out the best, to number 6, it's a disaster. Number 1 was this year's draft class, the 2023 class. Howie traded down with the Saints, or they flipped picks this year so he can gain an extra first-round pick next year. And we know that was with quarterback in mind. This past year's class was seen as a much stronger class than at the time. He made that trade right before the 2022 draft, which was, my boy Malik Willis, Matt Corral, Desmond Ridder, Kenny Pickett. He wanted to trade into the future, so if Hurts isn't good in 2022, he can go get an Anthony Richardson, a Will Levis, CJ Stroud. To me, those three guys would have been ideal compared to the other scenarios he was considering. Number 2, it would have been disgusting. It would have been really hard to enjoy, and it would have been a distraction off the field. But when it comes to the on-field product, number 2 would be trading for Deshaun Watson. Like when it comes to just pure on-field production, Deshaun Watson would have been better than Carson Wentz, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, Zach Wilson. With the team he has, yeah, absolutely. Again, it's the one I probably wanted to play out the least because that would have been a torturous situation. How do you enjoy that? Right? Like they're probably going to be good, but you're going to feel dirty about it the whole time. That's why I think that's going to be Cleveland this year. They're going to be good, but it's like, ew. I mean, how do you root for that? But with the way it would have played out on the field, number 1, I think is the 2023 class. Anthony Richardson probably is the guy I think they would have liked. Number 2 is trading for Deshaun Watson. Number 3 is keeping Carson Wentz. The only reason I don't have this higher is because I don't think they would have gotten rid of Jalen Hurts. I think he would have had to compete with Jalen, and Wentz was too mentally shot at that point. His confidence was done. I don't think even with Nick Sirianni coming in that he would have been able to withstand that. Now, with that being said, we did see him bounce back in 2021 with the Colts. Like if you give Carson Wentz Devontae Smith and then the next year you give him A.J. Brown, I do think that would have played out better than Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, Zach Wilson. If you would have gotten rid of Jalen Hurts, which they never would have done, but that probably would have helped. And yeah, I think Wentz could have rebounded. They clearly believed he could too. That's why they wanted him back in 2021. And Carson decided that, he wanted to be traded. So number 3, I would have said is keeping Wentz. It's complicated because of the Hurts situation, but you bring in Nick Sirianni. If you finally gave Wentz the best weapons he's ever had, I think he could have bounced back. We'll see. He might have been too far gone, but if he could do it in Indianapolis, I think he could have did it in Philadelphia if it was distraction free. The issue is I don't think it would have ever been free. Number 4, I think is trading for Kyler Murray. So Kyler Murray to me is, extremely talented. He's mobile. He has a huge arm. In 2021, he had that, first half MVP-like campaign, and then he fell off. Kyler is an issue off the field. I don't think he's a great leader. I think there's still some immaturity there. Injury prone. I don't love the talent. I get why Howie wanted it because it's a first overall Heisman winner that, has been to the playoffs and has had some huge moments in the NFL. Like, you absolutely bank on that kind of ceiling for sure. But it did come with risks that I think were even more risky than, keeping Carson Wentz. So I'd say Kyler Murray is 4, but that is a young, talented player that probably worth the risk when you're a good, not great team like Philly was, and where else you're going to find that kind of talent available because they weren't going to get it in the draft. And then number 5 was trading for Russell Wilson. Number 6 was trading for Zach Wilson. It's embarrassing that I loved Zach Wilson in 2021, but it sounds like Howie did too, because Ian Rappaport, before he walked it back, and my theory with that was how he told him to walk it back. So how this worked was when the Eagles traded down with Miami, and that ended up being the Devontae Smith pick because Miami wanted to move up for Jalen Waddle. The Eagles, before that, Rappaport tweeted, before the Eagles traded down, they tried to trade up to 3, but it was only going to be for Zach Wilson. They did not want Trey Lance. They did not want Justin Fields. Once they found out the New York Jets were going to take him at 2, the Eagles decided to move down with Miami. Then he backtracked that and said the Eagles liked Wilson, but they never considered the trade up. To me, that was how he's saying, Ian, if you want more information, don't say that. Now that the trade didn't happen, we don't want Jalen Hurts to know that maybe we wanted another quarterback. But thank God that did not happen because Zach Wilson is, right now, looks like one of the biggest busts in NFL history. Would he have been better in Philly? Kind of like Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray too, and all of these guys? Probably, but none of them would have sniffed what Jalen Hurts is doing right now. And that's why we got to be really grateful for the way things played out. They definitely got lucky to a degree that this is the situation that they're in. Again, these would have, and again, I respect and love that Howie was trying to, not have any stone go unturned last year in the quarterback market, and he was trying to find his guy. I love that effort, but his plans, none of them were going to work. I don't think so, outside of probably the 2023 class, or if he would have just took, one of the guys in 2021 like Justin Fields. So the execution, the idea was there, the execution was not. And so luckily he wasn't allowed to execute because of, a bunch of different circumstances like no trade clauses and, everything the way it transpired. The Cardinals paying Murray, Wentz wanting out. There were a lot of dominoes that had to fall to end up with Jalen Hurts with this contract extension with this offense. And Jalen now, it's incredible. He's like the best pocket passer in the game. I just saw these new stats updated on Twitter. Jalen Hurts last year, completion percentage, 72.5 in the pocket, number 1 in the league. His touchdown interception ratio, 20 touchdowns to 4 picks, second in the league, the second best ratio. His passer rating, 111.8, number 1 in the NFL. That was Jalen Hurts last year. Incredible that this is the way things played out because it so easily could have been something else that would have been a nightmare. And instead, it's a dream. And the Eagles, to me, are the best team in the NFC. And outside of the Chiefs, they should be the Super Bowl favorite in 2023. And a lot of that has to do with number 1 at quarterback, Jalen Hurts. All right, Eagles fans, that's going to do it. I hope you enjoyed another What If episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm sure your head is spinning with everything I just said, but that's a what if, and that's kind of why I love them, because it's like that Charlie meme from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, putting all the pieces together. So don't worry, I'm going to be doing these again for sure. Subscribe wherever you get the podcast. We're available in video form as well on YouTube. As always, again, thanks for making Locked On Eagles your first listen every day. Shout out to the everydayers. Make sure to follow us on Twitter as well, at Locked On Birds and at DiBiase LOE. We'll be back tomorrow for another show. Until then, as always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening. And let's go Birds.